Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Andrew Demeter, Social Media Manager at Chatfuel. Today, we have the absolute pleasure of being joined by Dana Tran. She is the founder of thinktuitive.com, where she's a digital coach teaching businesses and individuals how to best utilize technology to their advantage, making their lives easier. She is also a contributing writer at Social Media Examiner, obviously a very prestigious publication online all about social media news. You might also remember her as writing one of the most popular internet articles about chatbots, the comparison of Chatfuel versus ManyChat. And now, very soon, she's launching a website called codelessbot.com, where you can download and copy JSON plugins without the need to code them yourself or use a server, and use those in your bots for your clients at a very reasonable price per month. So go there now and check it out, sign up, opt into her messenger funnel, however that works. But Dana, thank you so much for joining. We're super excited to get started. I'll hand the microphone over to you in just a second. But before I do, I also want to let you guys know that throughout this webinar, we will have a live Q&A going on. What that means is open up that Q&A panel, module, whatever you want to call it here in Zoom if you're joining live. Ask whatever questions you want. And then throughout this webinar, like I said, I will interrupt Dana so many times, but hopefully ask the questions that need to be asked. So Dana, thank you so much for joining. Welcome, and feel free to start sharing your screen and we can dive right in.
All right, so it's great to be here. I'm going to say hello again, and then I'm going to start sharing my screen. And
if she knows how to make bots, she can figure out how to turn on her screen.
Yeah, probably. Just give me a second. And I'm actually going to hop off of webcam, but I'll be back on later. Okay, so just wanted to confirm you can see my screen.
Yep, looks beautiful.
Perfect. Okay, so in this session, we're going to cover how to build a lead score feature with Chatfuel. Again, I'm Dana Tran, and of course, everybody knows Andrew and his famous stay tuned, which people loved here, I'm sure.
And by the way, stay tuned until the end of this webinar. We're going to be giving away some goodies. So there we go.
Oh my gosh, just not even into the presentation, you're interrupting me already. Oh my goodness.
I'll stop for a couple seconds. Go ahead.
Oh, it's fine. Okay, so we have how to build a lead score feature with Chatfuel. So what I first want to do is talk about what is a lead score. A lead score is a numeric value assigned to each user to track whether they're a cold or warm lead. So the score is mainly based on the user's activity and how much they've engaged with your bot. It's really helpful since it can help you track and identify where the user is in the customer journey. So if you don't know what a customer journey is, I just wanted to quickly go over that. So this is what it can look like. And if you decide to Google customer journey, you're going to see tons of variations. Some might have more than 4 steps, but it's pretty much the same thing. So with any people, they usually start off as a visitor, where they first discover your business as well as your messenger bot. Then they become a subscriber, where they give you permission on how to contact them, and you get a chance to educate them and provide them with helpful, relevant information about your business or your field, for instance. Then after a few interactions, what you want to have happen is to convert them into a lead, where you get them to seriously consider whether your product or service can help solve their problem. Then the goal of any business really is to convince people that you, your product, or your service can help them solve their problem.
And go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, so I was just going to say, even though this webinar is specifically called lead scoring, that's the goal, you can use and apply the principles that Dana will talk about here in a second throughout all these different phases of the customer journey.
Yeah, exactly. So this is just a quick overview of the customer journey. Again, if you decide to Google it, there's tons of variations. Some of them have 15 steps. I think that's a little too much. I just kind of like to condense mine down to 4 simple steps. So yeah, visitor, subscriber, lead, and customer.
And I love the emojis.
Everybody loves emojis. So why a lead score? Let me give you three reasons. It's because it allows you to identify, target, and reach out to those who are more likely to convert. It also gives you a better understanding of how well your bot is moving through the customer journey, like we talked about earlier. And by sending out the right message to the right person, it lowers the chance of users reporting your message and your bot as spam. And it prevents your bot from being banned and flagged by Facebook, which is something that we all want to avoid. So if you want to start to implement lead score feature into your Messenger bot, you can get started with 3 steps. Defining your lead score system, set up the lead score in your bot with the help of user attributes, and then sending out a broadcast to warmer leads. So what we're going to first do is start talking about how to define your lead score system. So the first step is to determine if you need a single lead score or multiple lead score. Oops, there you go. Single lead score or multiple lead score. So let me explain that real quick. So for example, let's assume that you run a clothing shop and you sell both women's and men's fashion. So on one hand, you could just have one lead score, or you could have a women's fashion lead score and a separate men's fashion lead score. So this allows you to send more relevant information and potentially promotional message with the right product. Because it's not really effective if you assume, oh, it's a woman, because you could get the user's gender directly in Chatfuel and say, oh, she's a woman, so she's probably going to buy women's clothes. It might be her favorite store where she could buy clothes for her boyfriend or husband, for example, and she might be buying a lot of men's fashion, men's clothes at that store. So by knowing that her lead score for men's fashion is higher, you could send her more targeted information or promotion that has men's fashion instead of women's fashion. So that's just an example. The next step is to ask yourself, what behavior should increase or decrease a lead score? So does opening up a newsletter message count? Or should you increase the score when a person makes a small purchase or a large purchase? My advice is to plan all this out and think it through before you jump into Chatfuel to build your bot. So just grab a piece of paper or a spreadsheet, however you like to plan stuff, but just have a rough idea. It doesn't have to be perfect necessarily, but just make sure you have some ideas of what action should increase and what action should decrease a user's lead score.
I will interrupt again real quickly. And I think the advantage of using this lead scoring system as well is, because obviously you can just use user attributes to say, okay, this person opened a message or this person looked at this dress if they're a woman, for example. But the added value of lead scoring is that you can assign across all these different actions that they take. Instead of using tons of different user attributes, you can assign that numerical score across time to just see how qualified they are with one piece of data instead of messing around with all these different attributes.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it as well. And the last step in terms of defining your lead score is to define the warm lead score threshold. So to put it in other words, how many points would a person need to have in order for them to qualify as a warm lead, so that when you send them promotional messages, they won't consider that as spammy? So if you're starting out with lead scoring, what you could do is what I call guesstimate, where you're just taking an educated guess as to what number a user would be qualified as a lead. If you already implemented lead score, what you could do is look back at your data to analyze and see what the average lead score is for those that decided to convert or to make a purchase. And like Andrew said, since we're using user attributes to store the lead score for each user, you can actually easily analyze this if you're on the Pro plan for Chatfuel. So what you want to do is navigate to the People tab, and if you click on the Export button, you could actually download a spreadsheet containing all the user attributes for each user. And if you set up a lead score, then you'll probably have a lead score user attribute. And I know we've been throwing around the word lead score, user attribute a lot, but just in case you're new to Chatfuel and you're watching this and you don't know what a user attribute is, it can also be known as a custom field. That's what some email marketing softwares use. You can think of it like a container that stores a specific value or data for each user. So for example, a name is a user attribute that stores each person's name. So each person has a name user attribute where their actual name is stored in that specific attribute. So what we'll do to build this lead score feature is create a user attribute called lead score to store a numeric value that represent each person's score. So we'll show you how to do that in a live demo in just a bit. So what I want to do is give you a few examples of what behaviors can increase a user's lead score.
And guys, take a screenshot right now. This stuff is very valuable. This is very helpful if you're trying to actually build this out.
Thank you. So for example, you can increase a user's lead score by 5 points, and 5 points, it's not a magical number, it's just an example. But if they interact with your bot, if they read a broadcast message, if they clicked on a specific button for a call to action, if they download a lead magnet, or if they subscribe to receive updates from you, you can increase their lead score by 5. And on the other hand, what you could also do is increase the lead score by 20 points if they take any action that is a little bit more, that requires them to invest a little bit more in you. So things like if they provide you with their contact info, they're probably more likely to trust you. So you increase their lead score by 20 instead of the 5 points. If they took their time to complete an application form or complete a quiz or questionnaire that you built inside your Messenger bot, you can increase it by 20. If they registered or attended a webinar, like a lead score webinar, or some sort of demo for your product, you can increase it by 20. And if they decided to join a wait list for your product or service, you can also increase by 20 instead of just the 5. So just a few examples. This is not, everything that you can do with lead score. It's just meant to give you some ideas.
And Dana, before going to the next slide, a question here that some people might be wondering is, and I know you'll talk about how to decrease lead score as well, but for this, do the numbers actually matter? Like, is there a difference between if you do 5 and 20 points or 10 and, 40 points if you scale it, or what's your best advice on like numbers to use? Is there any best practice with that?
Yeah, I do have, I'm going to mention this as one of the takeaways towards the end of it, but I'll repeat it again later, but my suggestion when it comes to lead score is to keep it simple, because you want to stay, if you decide to implement lead score, you should stay consistent and always have lead score. Otherwise, if you sometimes increase but sometimes forget, that lead score value is no longer, what's the word I'm looking for?
Valid, helpful.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. It's no longer valid if you do it sometimes, but other times you don't. So the numbers don't necessarily matter too much. I would stick to increase it by 1, 5, 10, 20, like a number that's easy to remember. Don't do like 23 or 47, like weird digits that you won't remember, because what you want to do with a lead score is to have a system in place before you jump into Chatfuel to build the bot. And if it's a number that's easy to remember, then you won't have to always go back and figure out your system and just reference it all the time. So you could just quickly go, okay, if it's something that requires very small commitment, let's do 5. If it's big, let's do 20. Or if it's somewhere in the middle, let's do 10, so that you can remember it easily and always be consistent.
And if somebody gives you their social security number in the bot, then increase it by 100.
I think there's some GDPR related issues in there, but let's not get into it.
This is not legal advice. Anyway, go ahead.
So that was increase. What I want to talk about is decrease, because you can also decrease a user's lead score. So for example, if they decided to unsubscribe and they do not want to receive any more updates from your bot, you can decrease by 1 or more. I just put that as an example. If they signed up for a webinar registration, but then they decided not to they decide not to attend and to cancel it, you might want to decrease by 5 points. Or if they decided to opt out of your wait list for your product or service, you can also decrease by 10 points, for example. You can either match these numbers based on what you decided to increase before, or if they cancel just because they couldn't make it because the timing doesn't work out, you might want to decrease it by a little less. Again, there's no perfect science number. You just have to kind of think about what works best for your business, because every business is different.
Exactly.
But what we're going to do in this demo is actually walk through a pre-built iPhone store bot that already has a few pre-built features that I built in advance. So in this iPhone bot store, what you're going to see is certain features like users would be able to view a gallery of accessory products. They can view a gallery of iPhone products. They can view specific detail about a product. There's a section where they can learn more about iPhone tips and tricks. They can chat with customer service, and they can view career positions, so current job postings that's available in the iPhone store.
And
so remember,
we do have a question here from someone in the chat. They say, similar to this slide that you have up right now, does it mean that filling out a questionnaire is 4 times more worthwhile than interacting with a bot? Who decides the values and ratios? My understanding is that, like you just said, it depends on the business, what the specific goal of the bot is. But what would be your best advice there?
I mean, it depends on what the questionnaire is for, first of all. Like if it's a questionnaire, like a client intake form, and say you're doing a web design service of some sort, and they seem fairly serious about it, and it's not just a call for the sake of having a call, then you might increase the point by a little bit more. But if it's just a questionnaire, like a contact us form about a general question, that might not be worth as much. So it really depends on what you think is worth more. And you might want to think back about the customers that you've had before, your clients that you had before. How many interactions did it take for that person to become a lead, and kind of figure out your system based on past history if possible.
Cool.
So just a reminder, to get started with lead score, there's 3 steps. So the first one is to define your lead score system. And what I'm going to do actually is, this is the exact same slide that we saw before with the iPhone store, except that I put a few points next to it. So for example, if they viewed the gallery for the accessory product, we could increase it by 1 point, just because it's accessory and these items are worth a little less than the gallery for iPhones, for instance. But since they're browsing, those are just 1 and 2 point increases. If they viewed a specific detail about the product, we can increase it by 10 points, for example. If they decided to learn about iPhone tips and tricks, we can increase it by 5 for each lesson that they learn. If they chat with customer service, that requires a little bit more time, we can increase it by 10. And if they decided to view career positions, meaning they're probably learning about your store so that they can get ready for a job interview perhaps, they're probably more interested in becoming an employee of the store and not a customer of your store. So what you might want to do is decrease it by 10 points. Now, if you happen to have an iPhone store, don't just copy this exactly the way it is. This is just to give you a rough idea so that you know how it works. It's not an exact science, like I said. And just as a reminder, the goal of the lead score is to identify the warmer leads who are interested in making a purchase, so you can send out relevant information. And even if you happen to send out promotional messages that are well within the 24-hour window, they won't seem as spam because they already are interested in making a purchase at your store.
Dana, one more quick question before we dive into the actual demo, or before you continue. It comes from Luke in our community, and he asks if the medium through which you acquire a new user, whether that's a Facebook ad, a ref URL, just somebody coming to the page organically, if that in and of itself should play a role in the lead score and how qualified those people are, or if it should solely be within the bot. One good example that I can think of is, for example, if you're on a podcast and you say, hey, I'm giving away a free ebook or something, you use a ref URL for that. So maybe those people just want something free. They're not as qualified versus somebody who comes through a Facebook ad that you're specifically targeting for a certain income level. So in terms of acquiring users through different channels, what's your suggestion on that?
I don't, Andrew, I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts about it as well, but I don't think the medium makes a big difference. So whether they come from Facebook or an ad, but I think what you want to think about is what made them, what did you offer? So whether you're offering a free lead magnet or say a coupon that's 20% off something, like whether that's on a Facebook ad or it's on your website, like I don't think those matter as much. And again, it depends on case-by-case basis. But what is it that made them click on a button or a link? Was it something free? Was it after they completed a questionnaire on your form? Because you could have, let's say, going back to the website design, you had a website, you made them complete a form on your website and they decided to click a button to subscribe afterwards. Like that might be worth a little bit more. So don't worry so much, I would say, about where they're coming from, what channel, but what incentive did you provide them to click on that link or that button?
Yeah,
think
I
about
totally agree with
that. Okay. But again,
Perfect.
it depends on a case-by-case scenario.
As always.
I'm saying that. Yeah. So let's jump into Chatfuel. Okay, so what I have here, and everybody can see my screen, I'm guessing. Okay, perfect. So what I have here is a pre-built Chatfuel bot.
And this is what you'll get the template of after the webinar as well. We'll send it in the bot.
Yes. So we have up over here the main gallery block where I am. So as you can see in this block, we have the phone gallery, accessory gallery, some iPhone tips and tricks, and a careers gallery. So all of these have buttons that lead to another set of galleries. So what we could do with the main gallery, and let's say the person goes in and they interact with the bot, is we can click on the plus sign here, and we're going to add a setup user attribute. And we're going to set up the user attribute lead score. And I already have the lead score user attribute set up, but if you're new to Chatfuel, just know that if you did not create the user attribute yet, and you just type in a new user attribute, it will be created automatically for you. So all you need to do is type in the name for the user attribute, and it just gets created magically. So what we want to do over here is we're going to, with a value, we're going to reference lead score again, and we're going to click on the plus sign and increase it by 1. And that error should go away soon.
If you try clicking in the text field and then back out.
There you go. Thank you.
See, magic again. We have unicorns with us.
Magic again. So that's all it really takes to increase a lead score for a user. So when they go to the main gallery and they see this setup user attribute, users will actually not be able to know or see that the lead score is getting increased. So if you're going to check out this lead score template, or there is one lead score template that I contributed to the template marketplace, and you try to test it out as a user, you won't see anything happening because all this lead score is happening behind the scenes. So that's really it for setting up the lead score. And the exercise really is to go through, and Andrew, I would love your input. And we're just going to work through some of these blocks, and we're going to talk through and see what it makes sense to increase the lead score by how much. So this is for the main gallery. And if we go to the phone gallery, if somebody views the phone gallery, how much do you think we should increase the lead score by?
I would say, so we've already used 1 if they just look at the products, and assuming that our goal here is to get people to buy expensive products, and the iPhone's an expensive product, I would say increase it by 10.
10? Okay.
Yeah.
And this is just for the gallery of
Mm-hmm.
phones so that they can still see. And actually, the one thing I want to mention is to reference any user attributes. What you want to do is type in 2 curly brackets, and then you can type in whatever the name of the user attributes is, close it off with 2 curly brackets, and then you set 10, right?
Yep.
Okay, so for new users as well, what I do want to emphasize is do not put the setup user attribute below a quick reply. Because if you have a quick reply, it actually pauses the conversation, as you see here. So what you want to do with lead score and user attributes, what I like to do is always put it up at the very top to make sure that it always gets triggers and increases the score.
Great tip.
So that's the phone gallery. So this is where the users would see that you're selling the iPhone X, iPhone 8, iPhone SE, and we're not affiliated with iPhones or Apple, by the way. I just want to make that clear. This is not a sponsored ad. This is not a sponsored ad. But so this was the phone gallery. So now for the accessory gallery, we have the same thing. We have a setup user attribute card, and we're selling AirPods, the leather folio that's $99 in a silicone case. So what would you say this one? A 5?
I would say since accessories are less expensive, 5. Just cut
5?
it in half.
Cut in half. Okay, so we'll increase it by 5. And okay, so that's it for the main gallery, the phone gallery, and accessory gallery. So if they happen to click on more details for, let's start with the accessory gallery for the AirPods. That's worth, I think, a little over $100, $159. What we could also do is increase our lead score by 15. I have 15 in here. But yeah, 15. Okay, so if they view more detail about the AirPod, we can increase it by 15. And this is where you provide users with more detail about AirPod. Again, this is just a placeholder because we're not actually selling anything in this bot or on this webinar. And then for the folio, leather folio, since it's worth a little less, you can increase it by 10 instead. I guess we'll just leave it at that number. And for the silicone case, I think this was just a $39. Let's cut this down to, what, 5? Or do you want to go lower?
So this is the least expensive of the accessories? Yeah, let's do, we did 10 for the last one. Yeah, I'd do 5 for this.
Okay, 5. So we had the AirPods was 15, leather was 10, and this is 5. So those are the 3 products. Just based on pricing, we decided to decrease the lead score.
A question for you here too, Dana. Like we talked about how you can use different lead scores for different objectives, and here we've just used the example of just using the plain lead score attribute. But my only worry with that is it could potentially get confusing. Like if somebody goes to the phone gallery and then they're like, oh, actually I don't want a phone, and then they go to the accessory gallery. Do you think it would be best practice for people if the goal, for example, is getting a phone versus getting accessories, should they create separate attributes like lead score accessory, lead score phone for each of those, or what would you suggest for that?
Yeah, you definitely can. I just have the lead score here just to make it simple for the demo. But what we could do, actually, why don't we do that right now? You could do lead score. I'm just going to do an underscore phone, for example. And this because I'm in the iPhone X right now. So we could increase the lead score for phone. I'm just going to make a change over here by 10 points. So the only thing when you divide it up is you also don't want too many lead scores. So in this case, we have accessory and we have the phone. And if you want to, what you could do if you're on the pro plan and you want an overall lead score for some reason is you could just, add another column in Spreadsheet to add the lead score phone and lead score accessory together to get like an overall lead score. If you're a Best Buy, for instance, and you have refrigerators, TVs, like it can get a little crazy. So again, try to keep it simple and what would make sense. I mean, with a Best Buy, what you might want to do is maybe divide it into like big ticket items versus small ticket items to see what the lead score is. Because if you end up having, 50 separate lead score, it can get confusing. And if you're not consistent and you're not always following the system that you put out, then that lead score number will no longer be meaningful or helpful to you.
And
So
that's
the only way.
something good to note as well, is that you can combine normal attributes that are non-numeric and the lead score. So for example, which we'll talk about in a little bit, if you're going to a broadcast, you could say, okay, this person's lead score is 300, and then you could also use the and condition. So if their lead score is 300 or greater, whatever the case might be, and they triggered this user attribute on the refrigerator gallery, then you could say, okay, this person, you could assume, they're qualified to buy a refrigerator, or they're interested in one, something like that. So you can also combine, the numbers and just the normal attributes as well.
Yeah, you can do that. But it's just a matter of keeping the system simple, because you can get real crazy with the lead score system. And I'm actually guilty of that. When I started, I did a lead score and I broke it down to like so many different segments that later those number, and I wasn't being consistent, and it just wasn't useful anymore. So try to keep it simple whenever possible. And these numbers, I would stick to 1, 2, and then maybe increments of 5 or 10s to keep it simple. Don't do anything crazy like 23, like I said, or 72, unless you really want to and you can remember those numbers. I wouldn't recommend it.
And then another question too, Dana, is, and we talked about this when we were doing like a practice run through of the webinar, and maybe it's a dumb question, but I'm curious, is there any situation in which it would be beneficial? Because so far we've only used the like plus and minus operators. Is there any example that you could think of, or is it just not really worth mentioning, where you would want to, for example, multiply the lead score or divide it? Or should, again, for sake of simplicity, you just really stick to the plus or minus?
Well, first of all, that's not a stupid question or silly question, whatever you said. I can't think of the multiply by 2. I mean, you can, especially if they convert it from a lead to a customer and you want like a big jump in number to determine that they are a lead or customer. You could do that, but then it kind of messes with your number, because then you can't say, oh, okay, this person on average, when I download the spreadsheet, I could see that people who are in fact customers have a lead score of X amount. Because if you decided to multiply it or divide it, then those numbers are a little different. So when it comes to lead score, I can't think of a case where you would actually want to divide or multiply. I usually stick to just adding and subtracting, really, or resetting it back to 0 if they, for some reason, if they are no longer a customer and they're starting again from the beginning. But I can't think of any instance where you want to multiply or divide. But it doesn't mean that you can't do that.
Okay, fair point. We have some other questions, but I'll let you get more through the webinar before I hammer you with those.
No problem. So we're gonna stick with lead score phone. So we're gonna have that now. So the iPhone X, I think that's worth the most. iPhone 8, I'm going to change this into phone instead, and be sure to update this with the word phone. And we did for the iPhone X, I can't remember what we did. We did 10. So this one, I guess we'll do a 5, Andrew? What do you think?
I would say 8, but you want to have those consistent numbers.
Yeah, so let's do 5. Actually, the AirPod, I think we increased it by 15. So why don't we do the same thing? So we'll do the iPhone X by 15, the iPhone 8 by 10, and the iPhone SE by 5, let's say. Oh, and I need to change this to phone. Now, the one thing to note is I'm using the same number, the 15, 10, and 5. But if you're just using one giant lead score, what you might want to do is make sure that the accessory gallery lead score numbers you're increasing it by is less than the phone gallery, because the phone gallery is worth a lot more. So it's also comparing, make sure that you have, I don't know why I spelled that wrong, phone. There we go. So you want to make sure that things are kind of relevant to each other. Now, that's why at the beginning I said that it's better to plan all this out outside of Chatfuel. As Chatfuel, as great as it is, sometimes I think, pen and paper, you don't need anything fancy. Just scribble it down and at least get some idea, because once you jump into your bot, you could kind of get lost and go like, oh gosh, what did I do again for the AirPods, and what did I do again for the iPhone? So if you create a list, then jump into Chatfuel and just see what you have on your piece of paper that you wrote down to increase the score by, and just plug in those numbers. It would be a lot quicker
so
than planning everything out here.
That makes sense, and I think that's a really important point to highlight. So keep your scoring consistent, always use the lead score, but in addition to that, make sure that the numbers you use for one category are, less than or greater than relative to the other categories as well. So again, like we mentioned earlier, you don't get lost between, I don't know how to explain it the best way possible, but yeah, you want to keep those categories like numerically consistent, for lack of better explanation.
Yeah, and if you have a lot of products and this is what you want to do, especially with a product gallery, I would say it's almost worthwhile to just create a spreadsheet of your products and just have the product name in one column and the number that you're increasing or decreasing by in a second column, so that you can reference it. And that way in a spreadsheet, you can sort by name or by the value that you're increasing and decreasing, just to make sure that everything is consistent, as well as it just makes sense. Because you don't want to do, the iPhone increase by 15, and for some reason the silicon case, which is worth $39, to increase it by 15. I mean, that might be a mistake that you make inside the mod, and it's harder to view it in here than it is on a spreadsheet where you have a one kind of high level overview of how your lead score system works.
That's a shout out to Rob Rita in the community. Rob, you need a tool where you can automatically import Google Sheet data into user attributes in Chatfuel.
So we talked a lot about increasing lead score so far with the product, but the other thing I wanted to mention is career. So if a person is looking to become a designer at this iPhone store or a developer, and if they click on this to look at the position, what you could actually do is decrease the person's lead score as well, because they're probably doing a bit of research about your store so that they seem intelligent and they really want your job, right? The job for the position. So what you can do, instead of adding, it's the exact same thing as before. You just have the user attribute lead score, and then you would decrease it by 10 instead of increasing it by 10. So very simple, just change the sign around, and that's pretty much it in terms of decreasing. The other things I have here are the iPhone tips and tricks. So if you are teaching users on how to better use an iPhone X, I've heard there's different gestures, and you're providing educational material, the same thing goes. You can increase their lead score by 1, for instance, or you can increase that number. If they're having a conversation with the customer service, you can also increase their lead score because they're trying to find out more information. So again, same thing, just add the user attribute card and increase the lead score by 10. And you can also add this user attribute into sequences in Chatfuel. So same thing, you would create whatever you want content-wise in the sequence as a block. And with lead score, you would just type in lead score again and increase it by 1, for instance. So exact same steps with whatever you do, just be consistent and add these setup user attributes to each one.
Dana, can you go back for a second to that live chat plugin that you had? Because I want to mention something really important here as well. Obviously, at this point in the webinar, we've shown how to track user attributes and actions explicitly within Chatfuel, within the bot. But for example, this can also be done with the People tab, which we can show you in a second. So for example, if instead of using the customer chat or live chat feature in your bot, if somebody, say, calls your store, you could also have the people at the call center or whatever keeping track of those names, those numbers. And then in the People tab, you could manually increase that lead score if they, take some action offline, whether they, step foot into the store, whether they call the store, things like that. So that gives you more flexibility in increasing or decreasing the lead score and quality of the subscribers in your bot as well.
Yeah, no, that's great to point out. So I think that's it for the demo for now. So that's, oh, we did define. The one thing I did want to mention real quick is if you are completely new to Chatfuel, um, we didn't cover basic how-tos in terms of how Chatfuel works. So if you want just a quick intro on the various features of Chatfuel, I do have a completely free lesson on how to build a simple bot. The link is simply bit.ly/chatfuelbot. And keep in mind, it's a completely free lesson, so you don't need to sign up. You don't need to complete any form, jump through any hoop. Just go to the link and click play. And right down below it, there are a few other useful links to other resources if you want to subscribe to hear more from me, but you don't need to do any of that. Like I said, it's not gated. So you just need to click play and watch that video.
And Dana, I should point out too that bit.ly link is going to be worth millions of dollars someday. It's the original Chatfuel bot. I love it.
That is true. I wanted something memorable and easy to remember. So, okay, so we defined the lead score system for the iPhone store, and we also set up the lead scoring inside the bot with the help of user attributes. And the one thing I wanted to show you, I guess I'll show you first as we head back into Chatfuel, is the People tab, what Andrew was talking about, how you can manually update the score if you wanted to, as well as how to send out broadcasts to your warmer leads. So let me jump back into Chatfuel. And for those that are on the Pro plan, you'll see a tab here called People. And the store is doing really well with 2 customers so far, Dana and Andrew. So let's look at Andrew. He currently has a lead score of 50, right?
Impressive.
Yeah, I know. And then if you click on my name, I'm definitely buying an iPhone soon. I want 250. So you can tell I'm probably more, I'm more likely to convert than he will. But I also want to emphasize that even though this lead score is to guide and help you identify warmer leads, it doesn't mean that Andrew won't be buying a phone, because I might be the type that, research a phone and looks at a phone for 2 to 3 months before I make a purchase. And Andrew might be the type that is impulse buyer who buys a phone after, just taking a look at it. I need one now because it's broken. My phone's broken, so I need it. So just because his lead score is lower than mine doesn't mean that I'm more likely to convert. And there's other information that you do not know, but it does give you an overall sense of how active and how engaged this user is with your messenger bot. But say Andrew calls in and he's asking a certain question about the phone, and this is an actual physical call. He calls into the store and the person knows that it's Andrew. What they can do is go to Andrew, find him, and just update this value to, what do you want to update your value to, Andrew?
Let's say 500, because what I'm going to do is call the store and say, give me Apple's bank account details right now. I'm going to wire you $10 million, and I want this phone now.
Oh, gosh.
Because I'm the impulse buyer.
Oh, impulse buyer. Okay, 500. I think I'm going to add another 0 to that because you're an impulse buyer. So, well, actually, we don't want it that high. So let's do 500. And all I do is click save, and that's pretty much it. So when it comes to warmer leads, what you could also do in the People tab is you can filter the list. So we can say if the lead score is higher than, let's say the threshold for somebody to become a warm lead is, let's pick 300 so that there's only 2 of us. So let's do 300. If we do that, then you'll see that should be you in there. Is greater than. Did I do something
Sometimes
wrong?
it takes a couple minutes to update, so it could be that.
Oh, is that okay? Let's do a refresh then. Let's try that again. Lead score is greater than 300, and your name should pop up, but it does not.
It can take a couple minutes, but the other important thing to mention with the People tab, which I think we were going to touch on anyway, is that with this, you can also obviously segment what Dana just said based on the most qualified leads, based on that threshold score. And from that, you can use it in conjunction with Facebook ads. So you can export people who have a lead score above 300, for example, create that as a lookalike audience, upload it to Facebook ads, and then find more people who share those similar interests of impulse buying and certain activities like that, And then obviously that's a way to acquire new users in your bot. And typically from that, you can get a lower cost per conversion.
Yeah, so what I want to do actually, since the lead score we say is above 300, what you could do is save this as a segment, and I can rename the segment to warm leads, for instance. So when you save it as a segment, it automatically appears as an option up top here. So if let me try, go back to reachable users, which should be 2 people. Yeah, it's spinning, doing a refresh. And it's spinning.
It's because it's an Apple store, the spinning wheel of death.
But what you should see when you click on warm leads, as you see here, is the filter is already preset. That should say lead score is greater than 3. Oh, there we go. So lead score, warm leads. So it'll automatically filter the list. So this way you don't need to remember, okay, so what is a lead score? What's the threshold? You can actually just go back to the people tab, click on this button up at the top, and just see who are your warmer leads. And this will be updated instantly, I guess, whenever you click on it, so that you can see who your warm leads are and be able to reach out to these people. So we might go back to this, but essentially it will work. It just needs a couple minutes to update. I guess that's what Andrew says. He's the Chatfuel guy, so I'm gonna.
That's what the engineers always tell me. But on a similar note, while we're here in the People tab, a question which relates to exactly this is somebody said, can we give more points to returning visitors using attributes? It would be interesting to know who is really interested in the product. And with that, and I'll say it and then feel free to add how you would do this, Dana, but what I would do then is say, if the lead score threshold that I want to use is 300, if the lead score is greater than 300, which we already have set up here, and we'd add another condition, and we would use what's called the sessions attribute. So that is how many times the user has come to the bot and interacted with it on separate occasions. Then we could say, if the lead score is above 300 and they've engaged with the bot, say 5 times or something like that, or it's greater than a certain value, that is kind of exactly what you're asking. So it wouldn't necessarily increase lead score, although we could do that by creating a custom segment, but that's a helpful way to broadcast relevant information to those users who have continuously engaged with the bot.
Yep, no, that makes completely sense. So you can do an and no results is showing up, because we both have been in this iPhone store only once. But if you had, let's try.
Greater than 0.
Greater than 0, let's say. No results, because the lead score is still not showing up. But what you should see here is Andrew's name, because my lead score in the system right now is lower than 300. Only his is higher than 300. So just, I guess, use your imagination for now. This is when it works, this is what you'll see is his name with the list, so that you can export it to a spreadsheet if you wanted to further analyze, or just browse through and update it right here in the People tab.
It's a more convenient way, or a better alternative to using Zapier or sending the data elsewhere as well. We have another question in here. Will the lead score option be used to make the acquire to a one post that has over 2,000 people asking? So I think what he's asking is, can you use lead scoring as part of an acquire users from comments campaign with a Facebook post?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but I guess when you do an acquire from user, depending on how you set it up, you could just add that user attribute and increase their score. There's no, when a person interacts with your bot in any way and you're sending them any message, you can increase the score, and you could do it when they interact with the bot, when you could do it manually through the People tab. And you can also, even after you send out a broadcast and you see that they read they clicked on a button to read that message to get more detail, you could also increase the lead score or decrease the lead score, of course. But all that is definitely possible. It's just a matter of coming up with a system that works for your business.
Great.
Did I answer that question?
I think so, yes.
Okay, sure. So let's move on to the broadcast tab. Oh, actually, one thing I wanted to mention about the people is once you do have a list of warm leads, oh, it's reset, that's why. But what you could do is actually send them a specific sequence as well, and enroll all your warm leads into a sequence. Let's say you had a campaign coming up where you're trying to announce a new feature and trying to, you know, make a pitch towards the end, and of course make sure that it's well within the 24-hour window so that Facebook, so that promotional messages are allowed. But you can also enroll them into a sequence where you're sending them you know, educational material followed by a soft pitch to buy your product. So that's possible as well. So as for the broadcast, if you want to send out a broadcast, again, schedule for later. And again, if this is completely new to you, just check out some of the free resources we have in terms of getting started with Chatfuel. But what you could do is send out a broadcast and just target it to those where the lead score is greater than, and let me type in 300. Yay, one reachable user. Perfect.
Me.
And that's not there yet. But anyways, one reachable user. So that should be Andrew. And because there's only one and there's two whopping people in this bot. And you could say something like, you know, hi, did you hear the big announcement that Apple announced at their keynote? And only Andrew would receive this message. And this is just an example, because what you want to do is not, if they're a warmer lead or they're an existing customer, then they probably like to hear from you on a more regular basis. Whereas if somebody's new, not to say that if they're new, you shouldn't contact them, but you should be a little bit more selective because they don't really know your business and they probably wouldn't appreciate getting spam by promotional messages all the time. So that's
yeah, and just a side note for beginners as well, to stay within these 24-hour rules, which is Facebook's policy for Messenger, so you don't get banned, your page banned. You can take advantage of this using that little button there that says subscription. That'll, if you change that to update, I believe that'll allow you to automatically stay within those promotional guidelines. So always use that if you're doing a direct promotion. Otherwise, you can create a button or something like that that links to other content, which would then re-engage the user and reset that 24-hour rule so you could send promotional content. So not going to go in depth on that, but just a side note for the time being.
Yep. So when in doubt, always send some sort of educational material, I would say, and get users to engage with that message, and don't try to, you know, trick users in any way. But I would always recommend starting off with providing users valuable content before you make any pitch. Never mind Messenger, even though they do have that policy. I just think it's best practice because, I mean, when was the last time you enjoyed going into a store and being followed around by a salesperson trying to get you to pull out your wallet and your credit card to make a purchase, right? You always want to educate users, and I'm a big believer in providing valuable content, period, whether you're trying to sell or not trying to sell.
No, and that's a great point, Dana, that it really does apply cross-platform, because a lot of people in the community and elsewhere, they'll be bragging, oh, I have 150,000 users or things like that. And the equivalent can be made with an email list. You can have the same amount of users, but at the end of the day, that's where this lead scoring comes into play, because ultimately it's not about quantity, it's about quality. So you can have 150,000 users on your bot or your email list, but those people, if they just came for something free or a promotion, that's much different than if they have a high lead score, meaning they've subscribed for educational content you have, they know your brand, they've bought from you previously. So again, that's really the value of this lead score. And that's another thing that you could add with those, with that manual ability to edit in the people tab. For example, if somebody's an existing customer, you had them as a customer before they engage with the bot, you could automatically increase that to 100 or whatever numerical system you want to use.
And it's also, you might also use a lead score for spring cleaning of your list. So for example, if they have a low lead score and the last time that they were seen was like 4 years ago or something, then chances are they're no longer interested in that product, and you could just clean out your list. Because if you keep holding on to these people that are not interested and you send out a broadcast, you might get a little sad that, oh my God, my open rate is so low. And it's just because you're sending it out to a big audience where the majority might not be interested in your product anymore. So why hold on to that amount of people? You might end up paying more monthly fee for Chatfuel anyways. So it's a good way to learn more about your list, how they're engaged with you. And you could also almost like make it into a game where you're trying to increase their lead score and provide them with helpful content so that they interact and engage with your bot a little bit more. And it's kind of like a report card to see how well you're doing.
I like that. A report card for marketers, a much needed one.
Card. Yeah.
Dana, if you want to go back to the slides, I think you have a final slide with contact information and that while we answer any remaining questions. Some people in Zoom here are raising their hands saying that they can't get the chat to work. If you have any questions, just type them in. You won't be able to share your video or audio. So type in any questions that you have in the couple minutes we have left, and I'll let Dana wrap it up in the meantime.
Yeah, so I just have a few last tips for you when it comes to your lead score feature. So first thing is to keep it simple and consistent. So like I said, don't make it too complicated, or you might not remember what to do or how to set it up as you build new bot experience and send out broadcasts. And also stick with simple numbers like your 1, 2, 5, 10, 15, so that you don't confuse yourself essentially. Next tip is to always have a goal. So what is the goal of the lead score? It should have a purpose and it should help you in some way or other. Don't just add a lead score feature just because Andrew and Dana told you that you should. And in terms of existing and new users, what you might want to do is ask users if they're already a customer and give them like catch-up bonus points so that it's a little bit more relevant, and especially if you're implementing lead score to an existing bot versus rolling out a completely new bot experience. So that's something that you can ask or send out a broadcast and make sure that it's reflected. So just some few action items. What you could do is check out the free lead score template. There's one located in the template marketplace dashboard that I think, Andrew, you're going to send out a link as well to the iPhone bot that we've mocked up here.
Yep, and I'll send that through the Chatfuel bot.
Yep, and I have an article on Social Media Examiner about how to set up your bot lead score, so feel free to check that out. If you're new to Chatfuel, I do have a free overview video that you can check out. It's bit.ly/ChatfuelBot. If you're interested and you found this helpful, you want to hear more from me, I have tons of bot resources as well as a course that I'm launching this week about how to build a bot using Chatfuel. I have a few quick links, so just visit danatran.me and you'll find quick and helpful links to the resources as well as to my premium bot course. And also check out Codeless Bot if you're interested. I'm launching it this July. I'm going to be providing more information. I don't want to turn this into a sales pitch, but if you think you might be interested or you're curious enough, just check out the site and sign up for the wait list, and I'll send you more information.
In the words of David Marcus, hang tight. So we look forward to that. Dana, thank you as always for all the helpful information you share for free and all the educational resources that you provide. We're so grateful that you are a part of our community, that you've offered your time today. Obviously, you could be doing a million other things with all the credentials that I mentioned at the beginning. You're clearly a busy person. So thank you again so much on behalf of our Chatfuel team and the community for joining. And that's it. Thanks everybody who joined and participated, asked questions, and we will chat soon. Stay tuned for the resources that I'll send in the bot after this webinar.